Welcome to my watercolor friends. It's Friday live at 5 again with watercolor and dinner to follow. So this week, again, I'm going to review the subject that I did with my class in Dubuque. This is the week that I kind of threw them into kind of the deep end where they had to not just do things that were isolated techniques or isolated motions with the brush. They had to kind of put it all together, and they did wonderfully. We were working on this snow scene, and since they did that, the one that's like this, which comes out sort of like this, I think I'm going to, we're going to do the later one. This is the one that it's kind of like T plus 20. This is late in the afternoon, and then the light gets like that with the long shadows, and then it becomes a little warmer, ruddier light as the sun goes down. So that's what we're going to do. Nothing is going to change here other than the way we did this is exactly the way we did this, except the only thing that's different is the colors involved. So maybe if they decide to do it, it will, make it a little more fun as a review. So, as always, mise en place. Have your paper ready to go. Have your palette there with your colors. Spritz them to wake them up if you need to. I'm going to set that to the side for them to loosen up, and then we're going to get involved in the draw. So the first thing we do is we find our key horizontal and our key vertical. So in this case, I'm about 2/3 of the way up the page is where that's going to happen. There's a little bit of a pitch here, a little bit of a pitch there, a little bit of a pitch here, a little bit of a pitch there. So we've got a line, but things sort of pitch against it to keep it from being a boring straight line. Here we have at about the, not quite half, bigger, smaller area, bigger area. We're going to have that utility pole come about there. And then subsequent ones, which as they go back into space, get closer together. Now, here's that pitching line of the field. And then there's the pitching line of, I'm going to draw these darker for you. I don't normally like to draw these things this dark. I like to make them a little lighter so that I have the option to change my position if I want. So here we go. Because there's snow and the road has been plowed, there's a bit of a dip down. Hello, Michael. And then there's a rise up to the field on the other side. We have key diagonals here. Notice this one is not as steep as this one. That's because I'm standing a little bit over to this side. And I'm not making them a perfect Rand McNally road atlas. V. I'm going to bring them so that they're like that. Now there's there's a little rogue juniper here. There's a couple of buildings over here. They're not like the buildings in there, but these buildings have all changed since then. Time and weather and whatever. I'm just going to indicate them as a couple of sort of pitched roof with a little bit of a slice for the bit of snow on top. maybe a transformer, my transformer. I decided to put a dead tree in here. And there is another rogue juniper in here, which the fellow who owns these buildings has since removed. Okay, now take out the construction lines, and then we're going to talk about what we do vis-a-vis. Oh, very important, when you're putting these verticals in, make sure you know where their bases and tops are. This one's going all the way off. That's usually a good thing. But you want to know where the base is. Since this is going uphill, we go uphill and over the road. You don't want these bases to be all equal like that. So this one's going to, well, I'm going to move this one. I'm going to take that one out. Having that larger gap I think helps, say, recession into space. I've clocked them. I believe that utility poles, at least in my county, are 1/32 of a mile apart. I'm not going to draw on the shadow shapes. I want to paint those in, but I'm going to talk about how we do it, because there's a logic to that, where we put those shadows that echoes what we do with the poles and things like that. So there's about as much drawing as I want to do. And now I'm going to mix up the runny mixes. As always, we use the big brush, the mop brush. And I'm going to mix up the runny mixes of paint and do the washes that cover everything. Now, yes, the snow is white, but it's not perfectly white. There's some... I want a little color in the sky, but I want to peter that out as I come down here, because the warm color, as I move, that's from the sun going down, as I move into this deep shadow here, I want it to be not as yellow. So I'm going to start with a wash of yellow ochre, come down here, switch to water, maybe even just a little bit of blue, and do that. I'm going to skip a little bit, if I can do it, on the roofs. If not, there are ways to save that. So, big puddle. Oh, yeah, that's going to be way too strong, John. Of yellow ochre. It's a dense and powerful color. So, mise en place. If you're switching from one color to another in your initial washes, these beaded washes, then you want to have both colors mixed up and ready to go. We don't want to be burning our garlic. A little bit of Prussian and a lot of water. Don't burn your garlic while you're cutting up something else. Have everything ready to go. So, rinse the blue out. I should have mixed the blue first and the yellow last, right? But such as it is. Okay, here we go. Loading that brush from the side, not from the point, from the side, so it gets fully saturated. Pull across, make sure we've got a bead. I've almost started out my bead there towards the end. I went, oh, let's put a little red in it. It's that time of night. And I'm coming down to where those buildings are. I'm painting through the trees, you notice, because all that stuff is darker. So, I can paint that right over this. I can paint over this. I can paint over that. I just have to leave the snow on the roof of the building. Now, this is where I switch to the water. I'm rinsing the brush and bringing it just maybe a little bit of this. Picking up under there. It may not even show. It's just, when we did it with the blues, we left little white streaks, but this is later in the day, so that's not going to happen. Now I'm switching to the ever so slight tint of Prussian blue. Watch out with Prussian. It's a strong color. A little bit goes a long way. It's like cayenne. And I'm just going to finish that off. Oh, maybe I'll put a little bit of, ultramarine in there. Why is that? Looks like Prussian. Oh, John, you dummy. Well, I'll have to take it. Well, this needs to dry, but while that's drying, I accidentally reloaded my ultramarine blue with Prussian blue. Dum, 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 dum. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm going to load this with ultramarine. Maybe I'll have to put it over here. So, sorry about that little delay. What was I thinking? Because I'm going to need that ultramarine for these shadows here. That's going to be very important. So let's dry this. I've got the hair dryer. And I will mute this. All right. Now, we can go two ways here. We can switch over to our smaller brush, which I think I will do. That's the number 10 type brush. And we're going to execute this area back here. So it's a tree line, a close juniper, closer tree line, furthest tree line, and some deciduous. Now, and by the way, I'm sorry the other day, I accidentally, while I was doing the class, I had it on public, so some of you had to sit through a rather... I'm not too thoroughly mixing my Prussian and my burnt sienna. And this is slower moving paint. And I'm going to try to execute this not like this, like I did with the wash, but sort of sideways with the brush to get a more broken mark. And I'm going to try and do it quickly in a stroke. Because what I want to do is I want to introduce other colors. So I'm going to make it a little bluer as I'm going to the right. skipping my buildings again, and perhaps a pale mix of the Prussian blue to indicate the area that is furthest away. Now, while this is still wet, I want to get into some creamy. Oh yeah, boy, aren't they just fun to paint, Michael? I'm going to start putting some ruddy colors, the burnt sienna, into this damp surface. It's soaking in. And then I'm also going to get some ultramarine blue. And this is, you've heard me talk about the whipped cream in the cocoa or the foamed milk in the coffee. This is that situation. This paint is very slow moving. Get on the tip and we can actually execute some tree trunks. I am going to get into, let's get into a little yellow ochre as well, and maybe just touch in there. And what we're trying to get happen is have these colors mingle and merge with each other in a kind of blotchy tie-dyed fashion. So let's get a little more blue, so some places bluer, particularly on the lower portions of the trees where less light is getting, because the sun is getting lower. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to take this Prussian burnt sienna mix, which tends to go greenish, and it makes like a sprucey green, very slow moving here. And I'm going to execute this rogue juniper, which is no longer there. I like junipers. Or maybe they're western red cedars. They may not actually be bona fide junipers. I'm horticulturally challenged. Into the top of that, I'm going to touch some yellow ochre. Maybe here too. I want it to look like there's ruddy light kissing these trees as the sun goes down. And that, that we save for the end. This is dry enough that I can take that same mix, but maybe a little more water so it'll appear to be further away, and do this set of evergreens over here. And perhaps to kind of create a punctuation mark at the end of this run, I'm just going to put a little bit of ultramarine blue there, like so. That I want to dry. So the idea here is try to get as much of that done in a big broken stroke as we can at one time, so that it's still damp and we can feed in those more pigment-rich concentrations of paint so that they melt in and look nice. Now for what is kind of the money stroke, so to speak. We're going to go back to the big brush because we're going to cover a big area. So these blues are going to You can see we're going to leave some white or lighter areas, this yellow, or even this whitish area. And they're just like ties on a railroad track. They're going to be closer together, far away, and they're going to be further apart, closer to us. You can modify the widths, but this is big, that's medium, that one back there is small. So we want to graduate those things, background to middle distance to foreground, their size, and maybe make them a little lighter, or feed in a little bit of red as we get closer to it to make it a different character of blue. Or I may decide to run some of them this far, and then run some of them that far, and then run these all the way off the picture. So we need a lot of a couple of blues. I'm going to make a greener blue over here that's runnier, therefore lighter. And I'm going to make a darker blue here. In other words, more pigment, less water. Over here, less pigment, more water. And the reason I taped up like this is so I can do testers. That looks about right. I can adjust it on the fly. This is going to be like a beaded wash, but it's going to be more broken and irregular. But it's the same idea. We want to keep something. That's a little too dark. I think I need a bit more water in that. I'm just going to pull some of it out. And just put a little bit of the greenish stuff in and a little bit more water. Let's try that. Yeah, now that's too light now. So I'll get a little bit more paint. Do a tester. That looks closer to what I'm looking for. Okay. Coming down here, going across there. Now, when you're doing a big shape like this, see if you can spot stopping points. So like in here, you've got kind of a stopping point. There's a kind of a stopping point. So that if you need to mix up more paint, and I've deliberately undermixed it so I can do that, you can disguise that change up easier in these skinny areas than you can if you had to disguise it in the middle of a big area like this. That would be problematic. So, now the other thing is when you're painting something like this, you want to see if you can in your brain imagine walking on the surface of the terrain. I'm coming down this embankment, up over the side of the ditch, across the road, up that side of the ditch, down a little bit, across, going uphill on the field. Down, over, across, up, down, over. So try to feel that while you paint it, and it'll really help. So here I come. I'm going to skip that light part right up there, up the hill. There's that stuff I can paint right through because it's darker. Not going all the way. Okay, let's mingle in a little bit of the next color and come down here with a bit of a break. Skip a small thing in there. See, here's a stopping point or a place you can make it a little darker now, maybe just a little redder, some alizarin. Oh, it's too. More blue, more water. Didn't want to get that. And of course, this could change, couldn't it? I mean, we don't know what's over there on the left side. We have no idea. Now there's a small shadow from this juniper. Again here, I'm trying to and from the utility pole, I'm going to modify this by putting a little bit more of the other blue in this just to keep it different. If I miss a couple spots here and there, that's okay because we can say that's a gap where the light is getting through. Down it goes, down, and then over like that. Bit more paint, a little bit of pert red to do it up. Come across, I'm trying to do bigger shapes here. Lose a couple. Okay, now this is where I really need to start keeping a bead, if I can. This is gonna add a little red, a little water, a little paint, and here we go. We're almost there. There's going to be some oops, I got some burnt sienna in there, but that's okay because when they grate it, the gravel comes up. Here we go. Now you don't have to do it exactly like this, the way I did it. You could just as easily make some very distinct shapes that go across and space themselves like ties on a railroad track, because nobody knows what buildings or trees or objects are over there on the left that are causing these shadows going across here. So now I am going to indicate some of the tracks in the road. Now notice, since that's a bit of a shadow caused by snow kicked up by the tires, so I only have to do it in the illuminated areas. I don't have to do it in the shadow areas, unless, for fun, I want to take a smaller brush, and while this is still somewhat damp, I can come in there with just water. Oh, maybe it's too late. Oh, here it isn't. See, I'm lifting paint out because that surface, the water has not soaked below completely, and the pigment is loose on top. So I can suggest things like that, where I could even make some splotches for lumps. These things here, kicked up from the plow. Now we want to perhaps execute, oh, okay, while we're at that, here's a fun thing we can do. Where these poles cross this dark area, we'll make the pole light, but where it crosses a light area, we'll make the pole dark. So I'm just taking clear water, squeezing the brush out, and doing a little bit of a lift across that dark area. Squeeze that out. May not be real visible to you. But it's a sort of a watercolor conceit that you can do that will suggest, I don't know, illumination on the pole. Whenever you have a linear object, like a utility pole or a fence lamppost or things like that, tree trunks and branches. Whenever you can modify their character along their length, they will always look better. So another thing I'm going to do, we're down to the jewelry now. I'm going to put some blue in for the transformer, and I'm going to mix a blue-brown mix for a nondescript grayish dark. And I'm going to, using my pinky as a maul stick, I'm going to paint these utility poles. And maybe as I come down, I'll make them a wee bit lighter. Probably should have done those first, right? Now, I'm going to add a little bit of water to it so that the ones I now make are not as dark as this one that's closer to me. More water. Okay, let's go over to our tree. Get on this end of the brush and using the tip, very fine marks. Okay, let's get some burnt sienna and some red, or some alizarin and burnt sienna. That's always a good mix. And do the facades of these two outbuildings. Gonna make this one a little thicker too. I think I'm going to bring a trunk down here, which means I could make a bit of a bluish shadow coming down there, and I need a darker shadow underneath this to come down. I can run a shadow up here like that. Now I've got over here this, we need another, let's put some water in that. And we can make a shadow for this utility pole as well. Probably wouldn't see one from there. Maybe just something like that. Or on the other side of this. We could take some blue and do a little bit of splattering, so don't go like this unless you want birds. Let's do a little more. Doesn't really show, does it? Try to keep it down at the front. You don't want to do this into the middle distance or the back. I smear them to get them to look a bit more irregular. Maybe even make a couple lumpy bits here. Now let's get into that same burnt sienna, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre. For sort of a straw color, we're going to make some weeds here and there. Now again, don't equally space them. We want to make sure that there's a long, short kind of short distance, long distance. Don't make them all just, some of them are going to get bent over, some of them are going to cross the other ones. And then maybe they too could have, especially if they're going across a light area, they could have a bit of a shadow as well. Now for that juniper. Again, the Prussian blue, the burnt sienna for that oddball, a little more blue. I'm doing a stroke uphill, up and out. So if you pull the stroke up and come out, you'll get a broken edge at the top. Very good for trees and shrubs, that kind of thing. Just a bit more of that over here. Maybe even a little bit of that in there. Okay. Perhaps a bit more of a shadow coming off that unit. A bit more of a shadow coming down there. And some, let's see, pale darks for there. Maybe some just miscellaneous odd color, blues, and a little bit of brown maybe to suggest where the blade scraped through to the gravel. I'm going to pull a linear shadow across here as if something was a little bit darker over there. And you really can't do this wrong in a way. As long as you maintain that sort of railroad tie spacing and keep your shapes sort of maybe going this far, then almost to the edge, and then way off the edge, and small, medium, large, you'll get a convincing sense of space. So let's peel this and see what it tells us. I didn't mention this was Saunders Waterford 140-pound cold press. And we can take the eraser now and move any stray pencil marks where we want to leave our whites. And by the way, the reason we spend the extra money on the good paper like Saunders is you can use both sides and they'll work. So, get any stray pencil marks out. And there is our late afternoon in winter, which is still a little cold here today. Hopefully it's warmer where you're at.